And what we noticed from time to time also, competition, who are these two, barely 30 years old and thinking that they,
they know art
they
history.
They know our history and they know everything. So that has happened also. Real talk here. Real talk.
They come up to you during the tour?
Yeah. Not necessarily during the tour, but it happens that they just they don't greet. They don't greet on the street, and they think these we don't I'm better, and I don't say hello. That has happened. So. But it's just we will do our thing anyway. So whatever the others think what they might do or might not do, it's really just up to them. We are always trying to be as polite as possible, because why not? Yeah, why not?
Wake and Wander, episode 9. My guest today is Basti Knobel. This episode was recorded in Vienna, Austria. Basti is the co-owner of Rebel Tours in Vienna along with his sister Gabby. And I only had 2 days to explore Vienna, and I was really excited to take Basti's tour because, in my opinion, what he's doing represents a larger change in the walking tour industry. Typically, we find walking tour guides to be that maybe older gentleman that stands on the corner lecturing you. I think we've all been there, enough said. I was pumped to check out what Basti and Gabby are doing because they're both very young for the tour guide industry. As you'll see, they've taken a little flack for that. They're also very interesting because they're both Brazilian with very curly black hair. For me, it was exciting to sit down and talk to what I consider to be the next generation of walking tour guides and to get a little bit of their perspective on Vienna and some tips for first-time travelers. This podcast will be talking travel, talking to guests from all over the world. Here's episode 9. That's pretty unique. Are there a lot of Austrian Brazilians living here? That's a pretty unique combo, I think.
It is definitely a unique combo. Whenever I introduce myself, it's something that people have hardly ever heard of, I would say. But there is a community here in Vienna, especially, of course, in the big city. There is a Brazilian community, not a big one, but it's getting significantly bigger, I would say, but still not so big, but they are doing a lot of things, parties, organizing stuff. So it's cool. And being both Brazilian, both Austrian, always trying to take the best out of both worlds. So.
But I'm trying to find this. You say Rebel Tours with Brazilian energy and Austrian humor.
Yeah.
I didn't know Austrians were funny.
Yeah, they are actually. I mean,
are
they are. You might think that they are not, but they are. They have a special kind of humor, I would say. Especially also the Viennese humor is kind of unique, I would say. You could think that people are from time to time rather rude than funny, but that's what makes it kind of special. But you do have to understand it a little.
Are they dry,
to
sarcastic?
Yes, and some might mistake it for really, people being rude, and they are kind of. But still, if you understand it, you understand their approach, and also that it is a kind of a way to cope with certain problems in their life. Then at the end of the day, I always tend to say, always historically speaking, it was like this. When something new came up in Vienna, what was the first thing that the Viennese people do or did? They complained, okay, about why do we need that? It was never like that. It doesn't make any sense. Blah, 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 all the time. But then afterwards, after a year or even 10 years or a month or something, or even a day, they say, you know what? Actually, they were right in the first place. And actually, I do like it and I do love it. And Vienna is the best place in the world. Huh? That's how you could sum it up. And you kind of feel that on a daily basis, but also in the long scale. So it's interesting. It's interesting, yeah.
Where does that come from in their history? Is there something you attribute that to?
Austria is a rather conservative country, I would say. So the general approach is rather conservative, not so much laid back, maybe as in Brazil, for example. I mean, that's kind of obvious, but it's actually true. And that might be something also. I mean, historically speaking, the whole of Europe, also Austria, went through some very dark times in history when it comes to the Second World War. So there is this generation that went through a lot and through a lot of bad things and sad things. And you cannot just, pretend that nothing happened, and they went through a lot, and that's why they are also, their personalities at the end of the day got somehow, almost changed by everything that they witnessed and saw and participated, unfortunately, also. So it's definitely also a part where, it's a little, you probably, get it.
That makes sense. Is that changing with the new generations now?
It is. I think it is on the one hand. On the other hand, globally speaking, still, we are witnessing a lot of things in the whole world that are at least questionable. Okay, so we also have that in Austria. But I would say the new generations, they do know, they are aware what happened. That's what I would like to think. I think so.
Well, you were telling me on the tour that traditionally in school they would tell you all about the history of Europe and then just kind of skip over World War II. Yes. But now that's changing.
That's changing. That's definitely changing on a daily basis everywhere. Also, politicians in school, you always try to talk a lot about it, create awareness for this topic. You have it in the daily schedule, almost in the history lesson. So it's a big topic. And nowadays, people actually do know what happened. And they act, I would say they act accordingly.
Do you think that adds to like a little bit of feeling depressed, or because a lot of the people who are born now, it was not their fault, right?
Absolutely.
They didn't participate, but you can't help but to feel some regret for that.
Yeah, I think our main goal or our main task actually is just to make sure that nothing like that can ever happen anymore. So that's my opinion, that's what we have to do on a daily basis. Remember and make sure that these things stay in the past, and make sure that everybody is able to live a decent life in peace. It's not always that easy, as we see.
Here's hoping, mate. Yeah, I don't think the world's ever not been at war, so it's hard to even imagine that sometimes. But as you say, all we can do is just try and do the best we can.
Definitely.
Yesterday, I had a chance to go to the Vienna Museum. Vine, as you say it?
Vien.
The Wien Museum.
Yeah. Wien Museum, yeah.
And learned a little bit about how Hitler took over Austria. They had a nice quote-unquote exhibit about that, and was learning. I'm curious, what's the relationship between Austria and Germany now? It
is quite a good relationship, I would say. On the one hand, on the other hand, still there is this thing that some of the Austrians might feel a little less compared to big Germany. So that's the big brother, and they sometimes see the Austrians as their little brother, for example. That's might be something that they also make jokes about Austrians, the way we behave, the way we are, or the way we, do things, or the way we speak or something. So there is this little conflict from one side to another, just the other way around, just the same. But still, I mean, there's a lot of similar things. I mean, the culture is quite similar. We both do speak German, although Austrian German is different than German, and also you have got all the different dialects, of course. But still, I would say it's definitely a positive relationship. Also, a lot of young people, for example, especially coming to Vienna to study. So the whole city is full of young German students.
Germans come here to study.
Yes, they come, because they have a kind of a different system in Germany, where they would rely on good grades, like really good grades, in order to be able to study medicine, for example. So that's a big thing. To get into university in Germany, for medicine, for example, is very hard. Here in Vienna, still hard. You have to do a very hard exam, and very few people do have the chance to actually study it at the end of the day. But here, their chances are higher. And that's why they come here, not only for medicine, for other stuff, for other topics as well, of course, other studies. But as there is no language barrier, why not go to Vienna? So Vienna is actually, I think, seen very positively in Germany. as well as, of course, the mountains, the skiing. So German people love to go and spend their vacations in Austria. They love the hospitality. They love the good food. So it's a good relationship, I would say. But still, that's what you do. If you suppose if you, if you agree that you are kind of a big and a small brother, what do they do on a daily basis, mocking each other a little bit?
I've been asking everyone I meet in Austria this question, so I'm curious your answer. How would you describe the differences between Germans and Austrians in the way they behave or the way their personalities are?
Nah, this is definitely different. I always also tend to say, like, there is the Germans, there is the Swiss and the Austrians, all German speaking, all of these three, and the Austrians probably still the most laid back, relatively speaking. The
Not compared to Brazilians, right?
People from Switzerland, they are probably the strictest. Then there is the Germans, and then there's the Austrians.
The Swiss are the strictest.
Probably even quote unquote worse than the Germans. But yeah, I mean, when it comes to really Viennese humor, for example, we try to we very much or very often make jokes about how the Germans don't have a sense of humor. So it's almost not existent. Okay, and here we do have this kind of humor. It's almost impossible to kind of translate it into English, for example, because you have to have these little details. It makes all the difference. You have to very often jokes and so on. They only work in your language, for example, but still they lack, until a certain point, they do lack some sense of humor, and that is definitely something where the Austrians almost attack the Germans a little bit. Yeah, so.
It's cool that you and your sister, and I haven't met your sister, by the way, but looking at the photos of you guys online, you kind of look like the same person. You both have this Brazilian look. You both have very curly, dark hair. So you guys bring a totally different vibe. You're probably unique in that way, just in your tour company. Nobody looks like you guys doing this, right?
Yes. That's true. Also, by the way, our hashtag that we used from since day one is follow the curls. Okay, so you don't follow the umbrella. Yours
are looking a little short now. Yeah, I feel like you got to grow it out a little bit.
That's it. That's really true, because I spent some weeks in Brazil. It was rather hot there, so I said, just get rid of some hair here, and then we'll grow back. And eventually, when I'm back in Vienna working, it will be curly again. So kind of curly still for those who are only hearing now, but still. But yeah, that's kind of our approach. And it was until, again, since the first day that we tried to be different, make things differently, position ourselves in a different way, kind of as a young alternative on the tour guide market, where not all, there are more and more young colleagues also starting, but they're like tour guides normally rather old, I would say. And we wanted to be a fresh option, so to say, not only with our topics, but also the way we do our tours. So we really want to avoid for it to be a university lecture or something with a million numbers where it gets complicated and it's far too much input. It just has to be a really good mix between well-researched information and also at the same time just having a good time. Just that what we just did, walk around, show people interesting places, interesting stories, curiosities, everything that might be interesting really for a guest. And we try to combine everything, and that's really on a low-key approach. At the end of the tours, normally people say, okay, where did these 2 hours, where did they go? I mean, we just started and it's over now, and it was incredible, and we are feeling just like we'd had a good time with some friends. And at the end of these tours, they invite us to come to their, to their countries or to their cities, and whenever they come back, they would make sure to meet up again and grab a coffee or something. Also, family members always coming, and getting in touch. Yeah, my aunt did this. I want to do that too, and this and that. So word of mouth is a big thing for us, and it worked. It works. I think people do like that. They want something more individual. They don't want to follow an umbrella with 40 people where you don't even see the guide or you don't even have the possibility to talk to him or her, ask questions. So we want to avoid that at all costs. So that's our approach, and I think that's something was a good decision. And we stick to it.
Couple things there, mate. It's great. I think you're touching on just how powerful a guide can be. That traditional tour guide you talk of, it's that older person who makes you stand on the street corner for 15 minutes and just recites every fact they ever knew in their head, and just your eyes glaze over at some point. You start looking around. You're like, I don't even know where I am. I've lost what this guy's talking about, right? That can be very difficult. There's that. But when you get a good tour guide, when you get someone that really tries to connect with you personally and is really just trying to show you what they see about their city or what they love about your city, that's when you want to have them stay at your house. You want to meet up. You felt like you really you paid to hang out with someone for 2 hours, but you feel like you just stumbled upon a new friend. So I think that's a really cool idea. I want to get into some of your theories about that, but take us back. So in America, traditionally, a lot of things were family businesses. Now we have a saying, never work with family, right? Because it just gets really complicated. You two seem to have a really good thing going. How did you decide to start this company? And from your website, it seems like Gabby traveled to a different country and did some research for this. Tell us all about that.
Exactly. So the approach was really that I used to work as a journalist, as a sports journalist for approximately 6 or 7 years. But I was always in love with history. So that's always something that I very much loved, actually. And at some point, Gabi started a tourism degree at university, and during her bachelor studies, she had to go abroad. Okay, so to work and study somewhere else, and she decided to go to Lisbon and also to Mexico, but first to Lisbon, and she started to work there at a tour company that was like completely different, alternative, new approaches, just something like almost crazy. I mean, imagine their name was We Hate Tourism Tours. That's the official brand, actually. That's the official name. So she fell in love with their approach, with all the ideas that they had, with the persons and the people that were working there.
What were they doing?
They were just I mean, it's. At the same time, you do things differently, but on the other hand, it's not even something that you do it like completely different. It's the basics, but you do the basics well.
It's an attitude.
It's an attitude. It's an attitude, exactly that. And you feel, at the end of the day, you feel the energy of the tour guide, the energy that he transmits. You notice immediately if the person is actually enjoying what he or she is doing, so it makes a really big difference. And there she started to work, and her boss there was such. I mean, I met him, and we are such good friends until the present day. It was inspiring. These are one of these people, where you sit in front of them and just tell me anything you want. I will just listen, because you are such an inspiring and interesting person. That's the vibes that they transmitted, and every single one of them. Which was great. So she fell in love with their approach and everything. After 6 months, she returned. During these 6 months, we were there as a family, also my father, my mother, to visit her. We did tours with them, so we liked it. And we had the idea afterwards, maybe, we could do something similar in our personal way, with our approach here in Vienna. So that was actually the idea. And then we actually did a plus-minus list and put all the positive stuff on one side, on the negative stuff on the other side, and we decided to go for it. Very, very basic approach, very clean approach. And as it is, if something's meant to be, then things come together. It was just the same with us. Here in Austria, you have to do a course to become a tour guide. So there was this coincidence, actually, that exactly when we decided, like 2 weeks later almost, or 3 weeks, a new course was starting, so we could join immediately. We started this. It took us 10 years, was an intensive course. 10 months, sorry.
I was going to say.
10 months.
You described it as a course, but you were telling me a bit on the walk. See, we don't have anything like this in America.
Yeah.
When you become a tour guide in America, it's just go for it. You don't need a license like you do in Europe, so it kind of baffles us. Tell us about this intensity. I mean, it's really like a university course.
Absolutely. It was from Monday till Friday from 9 to 6 on a daily basis. Saturday, Sunday free, but still a lot of input, and you basically learn everything, like from the Romans until today.
It's all history based?
It's history, mostly history based, but also art history, music history, geography. Everything you could possibly imagine that a guest might ask you or that might be interesting to tell somebody. Also accounting, which I don't like so much, but still it's also part of it.
Oh, like how to run a business.
Yes, how to run a business. After all, you also have to know that. And at the end of this course, you have to do 3 really hard exams where they were telling us during the course, prepare yourself, and don't get sad. You don't pass it the first time. Completely normal. Everybody, almost all of them fail the first test, then you do it again, and then it might work out, blah, blah, blah.
Almost everyone fails the first test?
Yeah, it's really, really, really hard. So it's you cannot underestimate everything that you learn there. It's really about all the details. For example, I remember just in the first week or something, we already were talking about little arches in Renaissance buildings somewhere in, I don't know, Upper Austria, and I've never heard of that, and I was never into, I appreciate architecture, beautiful buildings, but I've never even heard anything about these things. I was there wondering, oh my God, where have I got myself into? But then you stick with it, and then it becomes to make more and more sense, and it's so interesting to see how everything goes hand in hand. So you're talking about architecture, you're talking about art in the museums, for example, and also history. If you understand history, if you understand art, the different times, how people would paint, how their approach was, also how they would build, you understand the big picture, and you walk through the city and you see a building. Okay, this is 17th century. What was going on there here in Austria, here in Vienna during this time period? This was the emperor. He was very famous for that. That's why he did that, and that's why he did that, and that's why the painters were contracted to paint this way. And all comes together and makes sense. And that's it, which makes really a really big difference, and that's what actually a tour guide is able, if he's good, is able to tell you and paint a picture and tell a story. And after all, it's all about storytelling, right?
This must have been such an education for you to get to know your own country and your own city like this. Do you feel your life is enriched by that, just by taking that course?
Very much, very much. I mean, just like I said, I was very much into history, but in love with traveling to Brazil to meet my family, but also within Europe, all the great cities I've been to already, and they amaze you, of course, but still it's all on the surface somehow. Also something that you start to understand is the bigger picture, not only talking about Austria, but the whole of Europe in a European context, so to say. So you are in in France, in Paris, for example, and you understand things were going on 1789. French Revolution, for example. What was going on here? Okay, yeah, we had at that time, Joseph II, emperor, for example. He was ruling at the time. New ideas, things were changing, new approaches. People were questioning the system. And you can put it all together, because it was obviously not only in Vienna, not only in Austria, but the whole world was kind of changing in different time periods. Even that is possible. So you can go beyond the borders of Austria and even understand something there, and also in your personal life. I mean, I started to be an art lover. I go to museums and I immerse myself in the stories of the painters. I read books about it. I really started to actively seek museums, seek stories, seek different aspects that might enrich my life. And if you're interested in that, you become a better person at the end of the day also.
So after you guys passed your exam, you immediately started the tour company after that, I'm guessing, right? Do you remember your first tour you did?
Official first tour or unofficial first tour? That's something that might be also, maybe.
So you did some practice runs?
Yeah, exactly. How we do our practice runs? We have with our father and mother. They live in the countryside, 50 minutes by car, and then we prepare a tour. And what do? We call them, say, come to Vienna. We want to show you something. So they come completely unprepared. We say, that's the topic, hidden Vienna. Little alleys, beautiful courtyards, all those places that even the Viennese people don't know yet. We have worked on that. Let's see, let's try it. So 2 hours, we do it, and then they give us feedback. Yeah. So this would be, so to say, the first kind of unofficial tour that we gave we always do that because it just works. They give us their honest opinion. They say us, okay, this could be improved. This is perfect. This is nice. This is what, and that's what we ask them to do actually. and it works. It just works. And then afterwards, when after that we go over it, change some things maybe, put it online, and then people are actually able to book it.
So by the time you did your first paying customers, you had already done the route multiple times.
Yes. You prepare yourself. That's what we always do. It has to be just 100% quality. We don't, although we make people feel, or they do feel like that, and we, by the way, I also feel like that. Like, walking around with friends from time to time, I feel like almost, how am I paid for this? Because this is so nice. This is so. I mean, you always having this in your head that must be exhausting. Working must be exhausting. Must be complicated. Must be no. It doesn't have to be like that. So that's something that I also saw.
When you're in the school, do they tell you, okay, here's some routes you should take in Vienna, or do you come up with it all on your own?
We do get input. They show us interesting places, the most important places, obviously, everything there is to know. They show us, but then it's really up to you. Do you want to start the tour there or at another place? It's really up to you how you think that your product works best. So everybody has maybe even same topics, but everybody does it differently in their own ways. And at the end of the day, it does make a difference. So can be better or worse, and that's how it works actually. Yeah.
I would guess it takes a while to get your timing down, because you may say, okay, when I walk these couple blocks with my mom and dad, it all goes perfectly. But now you got a group of 5 or 10 or people with different walking speeds. That must be something just over time you develop.
Definitely. You always have to adapt to your group, of course. So that's essential. But after 5, 6, 7 tours, you kind of get the timing right, and you just have a look on your watch. Maybe a little faster, a little slower. So also adapting, really. If you are slow walkers, a lot of people that ask a lot of questions, which is perfectly fine. We love that when people actually engage. Makes it more interesting for us also. And that's all those details that you actually you are not able to control 100%, but you don't have to control it at the end of the day. It's just fine. And if it takes a little longer there, you might skip a little part here, and that's just fine. And at the end of the day, it's just to have the tour does have to make sense. It has to have a start, an end, and you have to tell a story. And if in order for us to also carry on having fun also with the tours, sometimes I just leave out one thing because I notice, okay, these guys, they are much more interested in something else, so you talk more about that, and that's how you do it. But it's really just it's a feeling that you create, and then it's not a problem at all. Yeah.
Before we get into just talking about Vienna and Austria, some tips for people who are traveling over here, just something you said during the tour resonated with me. You were talking about how you don't really do big groups. You mentioned earlier you don't want to be the guy carrying the umbrella or the sign, and you said you have to decide what you want to be. Do you want to be McDonald's, or do you want to be that nice family-owned Italian restaurant on the corner that just does something really well? Talk to me a little bit about that. Do you see that big group over tourism as a problem? I mean, I just was reading the news this morning. Barcelona is having tremendous problems with over tourism. They just had this whole demonstration where activists were shooting tourists with water guns. Just a huge problem. Are you seeing that in Vienna, and was your strategy a reaction to that? How did you come up with that?
In general, I would say like over tourism definitely is a problem, globally speaking, for sure. Here in Vienna, we are still kind of blessed, I would say, comparing to other capital cities. I don't know, like London or Barcelona, like capital Barcelona, Madrid still the capital, but still tourist cities. Because here in Vienna, it is a rather big city still with 2 million inhabitants, but still you have the feeling that you almost in a village. Okay, so it's of course a little overstating here, but still you can get everywhere within 20 minutes. It's so fast. You have in the different districts places where you feel like in a little village. So also the Vienna Tourist Board tries to actively, which is really cool actually, show people that Vienna is much more than the historic center with all the historic buildings of the Habsburg family that used to rule here over 600 years. They are breathtaking. People they should go there because it's incredibly beautiful. But still, if you have more time, or even go first also outside of the first district, the historic center, and see how the Viennese people are actually living. And that's something that has been happening more and more. So the big tourist groups, they're spreading throughout the whole city, and you don't get this feeling that the city is so packed. Of course, in the first district next to St. Stephen's, to the Hofburg Palace, it will always be busy, but still it's the feeling you don't get as exhausted as in other cities, for example, and that's something that makes Vienna special. I would say still, for example, the last year was the best year for Vienna when it comes to numbers of visitors. I don't have the exact number, but it was the strongest year ever, and I was working almost on a daily basis, and still the city, of course, was very crowded, but you had if you know where the places are, you still could escape a little, and it's fine. So Barcelona, I can only imagine, or Venice, London. You have from time to time you have the feeling you can't even breathe because it's so much, and there is really this problem that you might literally destroy the city because of so many aspects that come with this whole bunch of tourists, which on the one hand is good because they leave a lot of money here. It's for everybody, just also myself.
Well, that's what I mean. So for a walking tour, you're going,
yeah.
right? And you could take 40 people with you, but you're choosing, you said you cap at what, 15?
Yeah, 15 tops, and that's an active choice, actually. We did that because that's what we said. We said from the first, we want to be the small little Italian restaurant with the family recipe where brother and sister, in our case also brother and sister, and maybe mother and father, are still working, and keep it simple, keep it original, but keep it good. And that's what we wanted to do, and we went for that, and it was definitely the right choice, because it gives us also the opportunity to have fun on a daily basis, because we get to talk to people, we get to ask them, by the way, them questions. What do you do? I know now what you do. You told me a lot about your family. How do you do it? When you meet where do you live? How is skiing in Colorado? How is skiing in Austria? Because you had just spent some days skiing in Austria. So we talk about so many other things other than Vienna, history, and this and that. So that makes it very entertaining, very interesting for everybody. And that's fine. That's good. But if you have 30 different people from all over the world speaking, I don't know how many different languages. Of course, I mean, there is a market for everything, and there are tons of other tour guides which are perfectly happy with that, and that's so good. Everybody should do whatever they want and however they think it's best.
Do you guys have good relationships with other tour companies, or is it very competitive? Turf wars, like, oh, I want this corner at 1 o'clock because of the way the sun hits the building kind of thing?
Yeah, there's definitely competition between the tour guides, but we try to keep ourselves out of all that. We do have friends, colleagues that we communicate on a regular basis. Whenever we cannot do a tour because we are fully booked, we offer them different tours. We send them to people that we know are good. So that's important also. And what we noticed from time to time also, competition, who are these two? Barely 30 years old and thinking that they know art history. They know our history and they know everything. So that has happened also. Real talk here. Real talk.
They come up to you during the tour?
Yeah. Not necessarily during the tour, but it happens that they just they don't greet. They don't greet on the street, and they think these we don't I'm better, and I don't say hello. That has happened. So. But it's just we will do our thing anyway. So whatever the others think what they might do or might not do, it's really just up to them. We are always trying to be as polite as possible, because why not? Yeah, why not?
That sounds like insecurity on their part.
Yes.
They're insecure about what you guys are doing.
Might be. I don't know them. But when something new comes up, it's kind of a natural thing to wonder, okay, what are they doing, and then maybe.
Well, like you said about the Austrians, anything new they don't like.
Yeah.
So
I mean, there is this story. For example, it's a tragic story. The opera building in Vienna, right? It's very, very beautiful, considered to be one of the most beautiful in the world. But back in the days when it was built, the Viennese people didn't like it at all. They hated it, and they the first thing, like, criticized. There were two architects, and they criticized these two architects so much that the first one committed suicide because he couldn't cope with all this criticism. The second one, some weeks later, he was already a little ill, but still suffered a heart attack because he was not in the best of conditions, also because of the criticism, also because of his illness, of course. But both of them died and didn't see the actual inauguration of their building that they designed, because of all this criticism, was one of the main reasons for it. Also, nowadays, the public transportation, one of the best in the world, if not the best. I mean, really, things just work here in Vienna when it comes to public transportation. Back then, when they came up with the idea, okay, let's invest, let's make it better, let's make it bigger, let's do, more. What did the Viennese do? We don't need that. We have our cars. We get everywhere. And if you want to, build a new street for people to walk, it just makes cities more beautiful. Where do we park our cars? All of this. And this is the first reaction in Vienna. It's always like this. And then eventually you see, nice trees, and it's not so hot in summer anymore because it's not everything with, full of concrete anymore. Yeah, I told you that before, but you had to criticize anyway. So at the end, they do realize that.
It's the opera house, public transportation, now Rebel Tours. Right in line with it. Yeah, it's funny. All right, so let's introduce people to Vienna a little bit. You keep using this word district, and I think you said there's 23 districts. Sounds like the Hunger Games. So talk us through that. One of the first things you explained to me on the walk was the first district and how it used to have the wall, etc. So tell us about how the city's set up like that.
Exactly. So nowadays, Vienna, 2 million inhabitants, 23 districts. But until the mid of the 19th century, this whole story was completely different. So Vienna was only the first district, everything that we now consider to be the historic center. This historic center was Vienna, and the city, so to say, was surrounded by a wall, a massive wall with up to 12 meters.
It's like 36 feet, 40 feet high.
Yeah, so quite massive. Also, in front of the wall, there was a so-called glacis, okay? And this glacis was a green strip for military reasons, in order to be able to see the approaching enemy. So you could actually defend yourself perfectly into all directions. And that was Vienna until the year 1858. You also had the other districts that you have today, but they were there also, some settlements, so to say, but they were basically little villages and not considered to be Vienna yet. They were only added later. So in 1858, then the emperor Franz Josef, who was reigning at the time, he said, okay, in the first district, no more space whatsoever. The city is packed. The city cannot expand because of this ancient wall. Also, the wall serves no more military purpose, so let's get rid of it. So this really, it's about time. So let's do that. And he started this project, and the wall was not there anymore. This glacis of approximately 500 meters, so quite a lot, also was there, a lot of space to use. They had the idea to build, instead of that, the ring road, which is a beautiful, magnificent boulevard that surrounds the first district until the present day, and it's kind of an open-air museum, okay? So whenever you walk there, you look to the left, you look to the right, you will always see beautiful buildings. For example, the Opera, which was the first official building to be erected on the ring road, but you also have the town hall, you have the university, you have the different museums, theaters, it's all there. So you could actually start walking at one point, and after a little bit more than 5 kilometers, you would end up at the same place, and you would have seen a lot of beautiful stuff. And that's actually like in Paris, Champs-Élysées, you have the ring road. In Vienna, and that's how you find the city. The basic structure starts from the first district. Around the ring road, then you have another district, like 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, almost in the one after another until 9. Then there is another big street, and outside of the second big street there are all the other districts. So almost like Hunger Games, of course. I mean, nearer to the city center, the better, the more expensive, but also 19th district, for example, like Beverly Hills of Vienna, in the hills where you have wine region, which is extraordinarily beautiful.
So that's considered in Vienna?
Yes.
The wine area there?
Within the city limits, wine production in Vienna, and very good wine, really.
Can you take public transportation there?
Yes, you can.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, 19th district, you can get there with the tram D, if I'm not mistaken, last stop. And from there, you can actually start walking. It's a 20 minutes walk or little hike. And you get there into those so-called Heurigen, which are wine taverns. They are down there in the 19th district, but also inside of the vineyards itself. So whenever I have family from Brazil and I want to impress them, or like really proper friends, I'll take them there, because it doesn't get any better than this, really. You have good food, you have really good wine, you have an exceptional view inside of the vineyards with, sundown there. I mean, this is insane. It's really, really nice.
So wow, where were you yesterday? I had the same break. So you can walk vineyard to vineyard, essentially, and take public transportation.
And these Heurigen, these wine taverns, they are all over the place there. You go to one tavern, eat something. Next one. It's almost like a Heurigen hopping. You can do that.
That's so cool. So the ring road, and that's what, Ringstrasse?
Ringstrasse,
yeah. That traces the outline of the old wall, right?
Yes.
So that if you were to walk that road, it just is exactly where the old fortified city used to be.
Yes.
And then today we did the 7th and the 9th district, and you said in the 9th district was one of the most famous addresses in all of Vienna.
Yeah, Berggasse 19. Berggasse 19, which is Sigmund Freud. Sigmund Freud was working there. He lived there for 47 years. He would have his patients there, and very famous when it comes to psychoanalysis, and it's such an important personality when it comes to Vienna in general. So, I mean, by now that I'm Brazilian, the Brazilians are crazy about Freud. Everybody, all the Brazilians, where is the Freud Museum? Where is his apartment? Where did he used to work? So they all want to know that. And for example, in the 9th district, there is really this famous place. Very, very many people think that he was always there, but he actually started his life in the 2nd district, which is the Jewish district, until the present day. He was also Jewish. So started there, and when he got more famous, he had more money, he moved to the 9th district. Yeah.
Why are Brazilians so obsessed with that?
This is a good question. I haven't figured it out yet, 100% really. I have to be, it's quite frank.
But you said they had a saying about it,
Yeah, they
right?
had a saying. This is, in Portuguese, it's só Freud explica. Só Freud explica. So it means only Freud can explain it. So something weird happens that you can't get your head around, and you say, só Freud explica. Only Freud could explain this, because this is so, this is so crazy. Only Freud to come up with a possible explanation for that. So that's something. Yeah.
Is he the most famous Austrian? Or was he Austrian?
Yes, I do think so. Yeah, he was Austrian, and most famous Austrian.
Mozart?
Mozart. You could name it. The topic, unfortunately, also, of course, very many people know, some maybe not, but Adolf Hitler was also Austrian. Okay, so he's unfortunately also up there. Mozart, globally speaking, very many people know Mozart. Freud, yes. Let me see if anybody else nowadays, even when it comes to football, David Alaba, football player, plays at Real Madrid, very famous. But yeah, I mean, and also there were Gustav Klimt, the painter. I mean, depends really. If on what if you're interested in art, then Gustav Klimt resonates with everybody.
I would say Mozart and Freud, probably.
Mozart, Freud,
one of those two.
Yeah.
One of the reasons I love taking walking tours, and I try and do it one of the first days here. I'm only here 2 days, but whatever. If you come to a city for a longer time, it's nice to do it in the beginning because you get all these little tips. For example, one of the things you showed me about how to tell the ages of the buildings, which I thought was really interesting, by looking at the windows.
Yeah.
Explain that a little bit.
Yeah. So whenever you walk through Vienna, something that you will immediately notice, the architecture is very beautiful, right? But if you're not that much into architecture, you don't know so much about it, it might be hard for you to understand, okay, which century are we actually talking about? And there is a little trick when it comes to that, to understand it better and understand it almost immediately. something that you have to pay close attention to are the windows. Okay, if the windows are kind of in a straight line with the facade,
Like flush.
yeah, exactly, that means that the building is really old, quote unquote, really old, 17th, 18th century approximately in 90% of the cases, let's say. And if you have a rather big building where the windows are a little bit kind of how do you use the word, like to the inside,
like
a little
setback,
yeah, a little
bit.
setback, right? If you see that, then you see, okay, it's still the building looks super old, but it's only second half of the 19th century, so 1850 onwards, still old, but not as old as 17th, 18th century. And with this little trick, with this little detail, you pay attention to that, you will be able to tell a lot of things, and put everything into perspective. This is old, this is not so old. But the thing is also in Vienna, everything looks very old. And this is also this approach that we have here, especially on the ring road, but also other palais, so little palaces. They look old because, especially on the ring road, for example, the parliament in Vienna looks like a Greek temple almost. Why? Were the Greeks here and did they build that? No, of course not, because we're talking about 1858 onwards. And every time they tried to combine the purpose of the building with the architecture. In the case of the parliament, for example, okay, it looks Greek. One part is Greek, the other part is Roman, but it looks mainly Greek for the normal spectator, so to say. And they thought, okay, who actually invented democracy? The Greeks, thousands of years ago. So that's why in Vienna, the parliament is built on the ring road in Greek antique style.
That's so cool.
So it goes hand in hand always. Another example, university is built in Renaissance style here. What was the idea? Yeah, Renaissance, yeah. Why in this case? Because first universities around 1500 in Italy, so makes sense to make it here in Renaissance style, but not original Renaissance, but neo-Baroque, neo-Renaissance, Renaissance, neo-Gothic. In Vienna, everything is neo, on the ring road at least, on the ring road. So looks very old, but it's not that old. Yeah.
When they build stuff now, is there a modern type of architecture, or do they still try and convert? I noticed there's a lot of restrictions. There's no skyscrapers in Vienna at all.
Yeah.
Everything is very lowly built.
Yeah, there's just one rather big building. It's approximately 250 meters. It's outside of the historic center. Main rule, nothing must be higher than St. Stephen's in the city center. And that makes sense. I mean, imagine just this extremely beautiful historic center and all of a sudden you would build a skyscraper there. Makes no sense, of course. And there are strict rules that you also have to follow whenever you want to renovate a building, for example. Also something, an historic building, if you want to renovate it, there is this rule where you always have to go onto the first layer to make sure that there's not anything important, historically important, that you have to preserve. And this way, they've already found like so many paintings and other details that were covered for centuries, and then they uncovered them because they said, okay, it's time to renovate something. We have to go there until the first layer, check if there is anything important. And if not, you can proceed, so to say. But that happens. It's the same thing if you start building something and you dig. Whenever you dig in Vienna, 90% of the case you will find something. Okay, so as 2,000 years ago, there was already Roman camp called Vindobona in Vienna, 2,000 years ago, and it was really there where you have the historic center nowadays. So the historic center is almost like built on top of it, and that's why whenever you decide to dig, you find remains of that time. So it's such a historic place, yeah.
I had a moment at the Vienna Museum yesterday because they break it up into floors.
Yes.
So the first floor is really prehistoric, or that when the Romans arrived and stuff. And they have that big mammoth tusk in there.
Mm-hmm.
And essentially the first thing you see is this area used to be all inhabited by mammoths and just hunted by tribes. Wow. I just had this moment where it's like, damn, these beasts used to live here, and now it's a huge metropolitan city, right? Yeah. Just that passage of time just sort of stunned me there.
Absolutely. And the Wien Museum, I really recommend everybody to go there because it's, you could say, brand new, actually. It's been renovated. It was there before, but it's now brand new. And it's super modern, and it has there's everything there is to know about Vienna. The development of the city, you can understand it there. So it really starts in the basement almost, and then it goes floor by floor, century after century, and you can literally walk your way through Viennese history. And there's also this model that you probably saw where they cover, I don't know how many millions of years, and it goes on and on. It's approximately, I think it's maybe 2 minutes or something. And you see how it, like really back in the days, millions of years ago, there was water here. Okay, not even mammoths, so it was, sea.
Just an ocean.
Just an ocean. And then it went on and on. First settlements, the Romans after that, and then it goes like step by step, and you understand everything. By the way, it's also free.
It was free.
This is really cool.
Which is
really nice, and super modern, and they tell the story in a really cool way, actually. So you might want to check that out. Maybe even before you start, because then you understand everything, and then you actually go into the city and see where was the wall, where was the first district, where was everything that I saw on those models, for example, where was Hitler standing in 1938 and delivering a speech to 200,000 people, for example. You can also you kind of learn about that before, and then you go into the city and see it, which is good.
That's great advice to get that perspective before you start traveling around. I had one other moment today when we went inside the church, and I always get this in Europe because, like I was telling you, churches in America, we have some old churches, but nothing like the cathedrals of Europe. In fact, I would say most Americans go to church in more of a community center than a historic building. So whenever I walk into these European cathedrals and just these towering ceilings and all the stained glass, and it's 10 degrees cooler inside, and you really just almost feel like, wow, I'm so small. And I said something to you about that, and then you started to explain about how these churches were built intentionally to sort of impress people. And I'm wondering if you could share that, because I'd never heard another guide talk about this in Europe, and I thought it was really cool.
Yeah. So there was a time period also where people let's do it like this. You all probably have heard about the Reformation, right? And then there was new ideas, Protestants, like Catholic, Austria Catholic, very Catholic family, the Habsburgs, the most Catholic family in the whole of Europe. And then some new approaches with Martin Luther started to spread all over Europe, and the Habsburgs did not like that at all, okay? Because at a certain point in history, for example in Vienna, there was only 1/8 of the population of Vienna was Catholic. All the others had all converted to Protestantism. So that's really the scale that we are talking about here. So this Reformation hit heavily, really strongly here in Vienna and in the Austrian territory, so to say. What did they do? They had to react, and they had to also participate in the so-called counter-Reformation. And they had different approaches how to do that. Of course, it was mainly with wars, and a religious war between Protestants and Catholics, where millions of people died. Also this 30 years war, 1618 till 1648. So rough times, but also other measures were taken to bring people back to Catholicism, for example. What did they do? On the one hand, they invited the Jesuits to Vienna, for example, to put them onto the universities, and to tell them, my friends, what you should preach here on the universities, the Catholic way of thinking, the Catholic approach. And what they also do was kind of a marketing. There is a perfect example of a church in the first district, which is the Jesuit church, which is just next to the old university. And this Jesuit church is a perfect example for that. This marketing, what did they do? They contracted the most important painters, the best architects. They wanted to impress people to a point where, for example, a Protestant entering such a church and say, oh my God, what is that? I've never seen something so beautiful in my whole life. Okay, Catholicism must be the real deal. I have to go back. Okay, so this is, I'm trying to simplify it here, but that's actually
kind of how I felt today. Walking in.
Enter, it's all the details, all the materials that they used, marmory from Carrara, this and that, and also when it comes to the Habsburgs, especially, very often the Habsburgs, they were not so, or they would have problems with money, lack of money. So sometimes they would always try to show off how powerful they are, how cool they are, and how rich they are. But at the end of the day, we're actually not so rich, and that's why some of these details also in the churches. They are not even 100% like Carrara marmory, but another one. Okay, so they were just pretending to be super, but they were actually very often lacking money, and they did it just perfectly, where you would actually think, wow, this came from I don't know where. This is a special type of wood and blah blah blah. But it was only normal wood. But it all seems, oh my god, it's so nice, it's so beautiful, and it was just breathtaking for those people, and it was another approach that they had. Yeah. And this Jesuit church in the first district is a perfect example for it also.
Very cool. Yeah, I'd never heard that. I really enjoyed that analogy. All right, so food in Austria. Since I've come here, I've had the schnitzel, of course. I've also had this, I forget what it's called. Hopefully you can remember. It looked like macaroni and cheese. It was a noodle dish in a cast iron pan.
Okay, this is something. Did you have that while skiing or?
Yeah.
This is how you call it? Oh my god, Käsespätzle. Sorry, Käsespätzle.
Yes.
Käsespätzle. Yeah. So it's basically it's almost macaroni and cheese. I would if you'd ask me, I would say it's Austrian version of macaroni and cheese. Yeah.
It was really good.
Yeah,
it was a little stronger cheese than what we use in America, but it had the fried onions on top.
Yes.
It was really nice.
It's tasty, yeah.
So that was good. Curious what other dishes you like.
Mm-hmm.
And I know people are pretty sensitive about the schnitzel. So what makes a good schnitzel in your mind, and how do we find one that's nice?
So maybe stick to the schnitzel at the beginning, as it is so traditional, and it's I love a schnitzel. I love a good schnitzel. It's really, really something special. Some tourists say, okay, it's actually not so special because it's just, I mean,
it's like a cutlet.
Yeah, exactly. But
Fried
it
cutlet.
tastes so good, and there are maybe different approaches also to a schnitzel. Some like it very thin, and with this very thin crust also that almost like is a little bit like elevated, so there's air between the actual cutlet that you called it and the crust, so there is this fluffy thing that almost like it's, how do you say that in English, like it makes this shape,
I don't know, but you're doing your hand motion, so
so you have this, or you have this fried option, which is also very like a good crust, but it's not so fluffy, and there is
more well done.
A little bit more well done, but I like and also thicker, like the meat is actually thicker. It depends on how you like it. I like the very thin ones where there is air between this crust and the actual meat, so that's really, really good. And in the city you have different approaches. You have different restaurants that do their own take on the schnitzel,
and you dip it in a cranberry sauce, right?
Yes, you can do that, and the original way to have it is with potato salad. Okay, potato salad with the schnitzel. Children like to have it with fries.
Everyone I had was served with fries.
Yes.
So a lot of people do that now.
Yeah,
right?
A lot of people do that, but the original way is with potato salad. And if you go to a proper Viennese Beisel, I explained that before to you. It's like a Viennese word for inn or pub. There you get a very an original one. Also, I mean, restaurants, of course, proper restaurants, and they serve the schnitzel. But you would never. I don't know if you would even get it with fries. Some do offer this option to add fries. Others say, okay, that's actually not the way it is. And it should be, so we're not even offering the fries. So with the potato salad,
actually,
it's just fine. It's just perfect.
I didn't like it with the fries that much. It's too much fried stuff.
Yeah,
because you get the fried cutlet and then you get the fries. I would have preferred the potato salad.
Yeah. So that's either your team, thinner, or team a little thicker. Okay. Yeah, I would say. And there are different places in the city that serve a very, very good schnitzel. Yeah.
And what are some other dishes you like?
I very much enjoy a apple strudel, for example. I mean, a perfect dessert, Austrian dessert, Viennese dessert, how I want to call it, is apple strudel. Apple strudel is really, really tasty. So that's something that you definitely want to try. Then there's also Kaiserschmarrn, which is basically pancakes, kind of thick pancakes, cut into different little pieces, and you also get it with kind of a jam on the side. Yeah, you can use that, which is also very tasty. These are actually my favorite desserts and proper traditional desserts. So apple strudel and Kaiserschmarrn. Something else there is, you have to mention, of course, is the main dish or the favorite dish of the emperor, which is Tafelspitz. Tafelspitz is boiled meat, which is served in a soup. So you actually have like a consommé. That's how the international guests kind of understand it. The soup, a clear soup, you do it with vegetables in there, and you put the meat in there, which gives the soup the taste, the flavor, and also at the end of the process, you can also have this meat to eat actually. So you cut it; it's really lean, I would say, and you serve it with potatoes on the side, and also kind of a horseradish thing on the side. It's a mix, and this was always the main and favorite dish of the emperor, for example, so that you can eat the soup at the beginning, and then you go on with the meat. These are very traditional Viennese options. These two, I would say. Yeah.
I'm guessing you can eat whatever you want, considering you probably walk. How many kilometers a week are you walking?
I mean, because we are almost on a daily basis walking around the city, and whenever I check my phone at the end of the day, I have approximately 20,000 steps.
Wow.
Yeah, between 15 and 20 happens very often. So I have never done the math really to get to the bottom of how many kilometers. But yeah, one tour in the morning, another tour in the afternoon. That's what we do. Tops, like actually we could do 4 tours per day. I do 2, and Gabi does 2 also at the same time. Hardly ever we do 3. Because, in special cases, yeah. But then after 3 tours, you're exhausted. But still.
Have you lost a lot of weight since you started this tour?
At the beginning, but then a little, I would say. But then you kind of adapt also to all this walking. And I do love to eat, so that's always refilling.
Yeah, it's getting to be dinner time now. I'm starting to dang. So we talked about food for that.
Yeah.
One of the things we can finish up now. One of the things I liked about your tours too is that you have a couple options, but they're all really affordable. For a 2-hour walking tour, it was 35 euros.
It's 35 euros for the public tour, for the public option. So there is this option where you can just check our website. There we put on different dates, different times. You can check, if something just works for you. You go there, you book directly on the website, or you get in touch for a private tour, which is also something like we actually these days we're mostly doing private tours because people also, they apparently really they also want to, have their little group, 6-7 people, for example. Depends on the size then, the price, but I think it's also kind of a reasonable price. From 1 to 7, we have 250 euros for 2 hours, and then it goes on and on. But this also all on the website also. So just get in touch, tell us whatever you want to do. The date. The time, the language also. We work in Spanish, in Portuguese, in German and English. So that's also something that we can work with quite a lot of tourists from all over the world. Only French missing, but maybe one day eventually we'll also catch up on that one.
The language skills here are so impressive.
Yeah.
One of the reasons I've always loved coming to Austria, Germany, is because everyone speaks such good English.
Yeah.
It's so easy to get around, and you're immersed in another language. But when you want to communicate and you want to try and make a friend or get some insight from someone, the English is there.
Yeah.
And you speak, 4 languages?
4 languages, yeah.
And you remember all this just from high school?
Yeah, English is really from high school, and then obviously working on a daily basis. Portuguese from my mom, always speaking Portuguese since the day I was born, only Portuguese. Then Spanish, Portuguese, quite similar, huh? So it was not so hard for me to
They're
learn.
not that similar.
Yeah,
They're not that similar.
if you're good with language, language is really my thing, and history, but languages I also very much like that. So it was easier than for others for me to learn Spanish in school. And if you keep using these, then it's good. Yeah.
Do you speak to your sister in German or in Portuguese?
We speak in German whenever we don't want people to understand us, then we skip to Portuguese.
Yeah, I heard you speaking to her in Portuguese today, man.
It's something that happens. Sometimes, as from time to time, we just have to skip from Portuguese in the morning to English in the afternoon to German and this and that, and that is I'm really seeing. From now it also happened from time to time. We are just the most basic vocabulary. I don't know, like window. You just don't remember the name window. Then you come, buddy, help me out here. What is this?
Well, I was laughing at that because you're apologizing to me when you can't remember a single word, and I'm just thinking Americans are the worst in the world with languages, right? Because we're not surrounded by any of those countries. A lot of people speak Spanish. We have that, but we're not exposed to it. So when I see someone like you that speaks 4 or 5 languages, I'm just always so impressed, mate. And you're living your life. Like you said, you might speak English in the morning, Portuguese in the afternoon, German at night. You're kind of just in all these different personalities. And I didn't tell you this today because I didn't want you to try and speak to me, but I'm taking Spanish classes now. And I even feel like I just got back from Mexico. I was there for a week for a conference and some travels. I was living this personality where I was saying what I knew how to say, not what I wanted to say necessarily, right? And I really felt like a different person where I was kind of expressing myself in a different way than I would have if I was speaking English, or I would have been a totally different person. So it's really amazing to me how you can just go through all these different little personalities of yourself. It's impressive, mate.
Yeah. Thank you so much. That's nice.
Well, thanks for spending some time with me. When you travel, are you taking walking tours, or what's your style?
Yes, I do take them now. Before, I didn't do that actually so much, but I really understand now that it's like getting somewhere, doing like an overview tour, understand the place, and then go on by myself. So I think that is something that a lot of people do because they feel it really makes sense, to get an overview, to understand, and then explore.
It's healthy.
Yeah.
So I like what you're doing and spreading that spirit of travel. It's awesome.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you also, just for the opportunity to be here, to talk with you. Already checked out what you're doing, your podcast before, and really enjoying it. And congratulations also. And now I know you probably are tomorrow is your last day, and then you will just, go to the next city and explore even more, and maybe, meet some interesting people there also. So that's also like really inspiring. I mean, we talked about a lot today, but it is so satisfying for me. Just again, another day and another cool story to tell, just to have had the experience to just do everything. I did the tour, podcast, my first podcast. I've never been on a podcast before. So yes, it's just great. It's just everything that we talked about today is just coming down here, and that's I think it's a good way to end our conversation. And thank you so much.
Well, you're a natural, mate, and it was fun stuff. Honestly, it's just like I said, it would just be like talking to a friend, dude. So I'll join a long list of your guests and saying, okay, we're friends now, and when you come to Colorado, you can come stay with me, buddy.
Perfect.
All right. Thanks so much for your time.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for listening to the episode. If you enjoyed it, you may enjoy the previous episode where we explore the Mexican state of Oaxaca, as well as the mountains surrounding the region and some of the indigenous people that are just opening their communities to tourism. You may also enjoy our next episode. We are going to head down to Brazil, to a very remote area called the Pantanal, where there's kind of an African safari-like experience starting to develop. We'll check in with a local guide down there to see what the deal is, and I will head out myself to explore for some jaguars. Until next week, you can find me online at Wake and Wander World.
Now I'm riding the terrain, flying high up once again. Got my crew sitting healthy and my boo living wealthy. Level 99, never settle in my mind. So I pedal and I climb up the pedestal and find almighty weapon. So I calm, lightly step into the castle. Satchel, tackled, wrestled down the corridor where I'm grounded through the floor. Roundhouse into my core, down, out, and through the door. Sword down at my side, I gotta round up and ride. Face boss, break jaws till I take off. Face off, stop and swing my serious strike. This is it. Take the title, disappear in the night to the whole wide world. Got the keys to the kingdom overseas with the wisdom, guarantee that my rhythm hit the whole wide world. Slay the boss in the castle when we cross final battle. Then I'll walk out, travel to the whole wide world. Got the keys to the kingdom. Overseas with the wisdom, guarantee that my rhythm hit the whole wide world. Slay the boss in the castle when we cross final battle. Then I walk out traveling.